Hey, welcome to Peace, Love, and Chaos. I'm Kelly Cameron. Let's talk about power. A couple of weeks ago, we talked about leadership. So, with leadership, usually comes power. There's kind of a relationship there. And sometimes power gets a bad rap, and it depends on how you're using it, what the nature of the power is. Um, and the absence of power would be feeling powerless, which is not great. So I really love the work of Brene Brown. She talks about power over versus power with or power within. And she some of her research, she found a really great definition of power that it was from Martin Luther King Jr. And he said that power is defined as the ability to achieve purpose and affect change, which is a great, just like base level power definition. Um, there's no judgment there. It's not good or bad or one side against the other. So that's a nice base description, the ability to achieve purpose and affect change. So that's power. Um, how you use power, that's a whole nother ball of wax. So using power over people, that's not great. There's um I guess a winner and a loser sort of thing. It makes power over is more aggressive. It's using fear. It's maybe belittling people or treating people poorly, but it's driven by fear. So, like ruling with an iron fist sort of thing, or ruling with a heavy hand. So it could be, that could be in a workplace, that can be in a family setting, that can be in a relationship, that can be in politics and government. So power over is not what we're working towards, because then there's the people in power using fear to control and have power over, and then you have people that feel powerless. The flip side of that is power with. That's lifting up people, empowering people, believing in others, and leading by example. So, you know, power is certainly a topic lately. I suppose that's one word that we can use in this interesting climate. Um, and in talking about leadership, and different types of leadership, and how, what kind of leader do you want to be in your life, in your family, in your relationships, in your workplace, and so on. So coming from a place of power, how do you empower yourself? How do you empower your families and in your relationship and the people that you work with? Um, versus taking care to not try to have control or power over people. So power over people, it just doesn't work very well. Now the people that are wielding that kind of power, they do feel it works. Um, I re I remember hearing a story from somebody that grew up in New York, as a construction engineer, way back in the day, and their mentor taught them how to be really really aggressive and scare people, like use fear to manage and rule their people, to get them to do what they needed to get done. And I remember hearing that story and I was shocked. I'm like people are teaching that. Yeah, and it's been a thing for sure. And I know that a lot of times in families, the parents, like maybe the stereotypically it's the dad, but it could be the, either parent or maybe a grandparent or an uncle or whomever can rule by fear. You instill fear in a child, they're going to get spanked or um, just threatened, even just the threat of physical violence or withdrawing attention. Ruling with power, ruling by fear is it doesn't turn out well. It doesn't last. Ideally, it doesn't last long. As adults, we're not going to stand for that for very long. But kids, they don't really have a choice in the matter. And this is where you have people growing up with trauma and spending a lot of years working through that, or being prisoners of that trauma in their minds and in their emotions. So, power, be careful with how you're wielding your power. And we all have power, whether it's just with ourselves or with people around us. Um, my intent would never be to cause someone to feel fear or feeling powerless. So I want to lift up and empower people to know their worth and to have that connection with themselves and to feel strong in themselves and strong to make their own decisions and stand their ground and know what they stand for. What are their values? What do they believe in? What's important to them? Um, who they are. So having that protected space, that safe space to figure out who they are, that's empowerment. That's what I'm all about. And I know that in this time and space, not everybody believes in that type of power. And so there are people and there are groups that there's some genuine fear coming up and bubbling up to the surface of what's going to happen after the first of the year, after the new administration. And yep, we're talking politics again because that is in the forefront of many people's minds and worries and concerns and the uncertainty of it all. You have somebody that talks big talk, and maybe historically hasn't always followed through with all of the promises or initiatives or things that they said that they would do. Um, this seems a little different this time. There's a pretty big team of people that are willing and ready and starting to put things in place to maybe make good on those promises and threats. So understandably, there's a lot of people that are feeling concern. So how how do you prepare yourself? How do you empower yourself? Um, what do you do? Um, Stick together. Community. I'm hearing the word community a lot in a lot of different spaces that I'm poking in and traveling in and being a part of, reading articles and listening to different creators, different people. Is community is really, really important. So find find people that you like, people that you love, and stick close to them. We don't have to go through this alone. We that's where the fear comes in. The fear mongering is making you feel like you're alone and you're on your own and that you're a target. Um, Community is when you have connection with other people, and it can be any different interests, lots of different interests. Um, find people that you want to spend time with. Find a place that you want to do something that means something to you, whether it's I don't know, helping out at like a food pantry or a soup kitchen or volunteering at school or at a senior center, help out there, like, uh, read books to the dogs at the dog shelter, just feeling like a sense of purpose, and then creating community around that, would be some ideas, some thoughts. So this whole power over versus power with and empowerment and feeling powerless versus empowered. Um, some of what has happened, some of the things that I've noticed is this disillusionment of a lot. The disillusionment can go through so many different categories. So, disillusionment of the political process or our government officials, or it can be closer to home. Disillusionment of, who you thought your boss or leaders are. Like maybe you found something out and you're like, oh, they don't have the same values and beliefs that I do. And so what does that mean for me? Or disillusionment of people that family or friends that um, maybe you recently found out that they have very different beliefs than you, and you didn't realize it. And maybe it's important now. Maybe it's not something you can sweep under the rug anymore. So that disillusionment, I think a lot of people have been feeling into that. Um, Thanksgiving was just a few days ago, and I heard a lot of stories and read a lot of um, headlines about, again with the election, people that voted a different way. People that voted the other way, they don't want to spend time with the family members that voted for the incoming administration. They don't want to, that, no, they finally got to that point where they're like, no, that's too important. That crossed a line, that crossed a boundary for me, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. So a lot of disillusionment in relationships and how we think people are. Um, yeah, and watching this political process, I mean, populating a government to run the country. I can't even imagine that undertaking. But I know that there are structures and processes in place so that it's not an impossible task, because we do this every 4 to 8 years. We turn over um, a new leader in the White House, and there's a whole gaggle of people that are helping run the government. So there's really high profile positions, and then there's, not so high profile. But a lot of the people being appointed or discussed to be appointed to a lot of these positions, um, some interesting picks. So when we talk about leadership and power, and how you're using your power. What perspective of power were you coming from on that? Power of using fear and division, or power to use to empower people? What are you seeing? What are you seeing when you see the different picks and nominations coming, and their stories? And stepping back for a second, depending on where you're getting if you're paying attention, stepping back even further, if you're paying attention to the news, excuse me, the political news, some people have turned it off because it's been a lot. I actually stepped away from the news merry-go-round for the last several days. I talk about the spin of the merry-go-round, the news cycle ever since 2015. The news cycle is fast and furious. It was never like that before. So now, instead of one big story that might last for a week or two, you've got a new story, sensational headlines like every hour, if not multiple in an hour. So it's at breakneck speed, and there's a lot to pay attention to. And I think sometimes I think that that's intentional to create overwhelm and confusion. So people either just tune it out, or it's just really hard to follow that, or you just kind of become numb to all those just outrageous things that you're hearing. Like, oh, yeah, that becomes a new normal. It normalizes the craziness. Um, the boiling of the frog analogy. You boil a frog 1 degree at a time. You turn up the temperature, you know, pot, stove, water with the frog. Not that you would ever do that. It's just an analogy. But you turn it up 1 degree at a time, and the frog feels the heat, but it's not too bad, and they're able to adjust. So then they normalize that temperature. And then the next degree, and it's like, oh, and they are able to adapt to 1 degree at a time until it's too late. So I feel like the news cycles, that's what's happened over the last several years, is the outrageous headlines that would have been showstoppers in the past are now just the norm. And what I was referring to a minute ago about depending on where your news sources are, um, if you're watching or listening to more conservative or right wing type sources, whether it's like talk radio or Fox News, or even some of the big network stations or online, um, some of the social media, you're in a highly curated ecosystem with an echo, um, especially during leading up to the election. Um, People that only pay attention to the conservative side, they were getting very different stories, or not the full story, than if you're going straight to the source of the reporter. I poked around, I looked around. There were it was interesting. So it's funny because I know that free speech was like a big issue, but if you weren't getting the full story or all of the information, I mean, perhaps you would have made a different decision. I don't know. Um, so just cautioning people to pay attention to that. Um, Very curated ecosystems on both sides of the aisle for sure. So yeah, dig into it. If it's something that you're following, if you're following the news and you're following politics, I would definitely look into that and not just believe everything that you're hearing, and look at your sources and be willing to listen to both sides of the aisle, because it can be a little eye-opening, really eye-opening actually. Um, and so these cabinet picks that are going on. Again, I haven't really watched the news in like a week or so. It's been delightful. I highly recommend stepping away, at least for a period of time, getting off that merry-go-round, or at least being at the center of the merry-go-round where there's stillness, calm of the storm. Um, so I was thinking about all the billionaires that are involved in politics. And I was thinking, I was actually talking to a friend of mine about billionaires. So in the United States, there's about 800 billionaires. I don't know what their range of billions are, but most Americans, the vast majority of Americans are, this is some statistics that I've heard. red. So the vast majority of Americans are about two paychecks away, two paychecks away from serious trouble, from disaster. Whereas we are 200,000 paychecks away from being a billionaire. So we throw around the word billionaire. There's a big difference between someone that makes five figures, even six figures, and a billionaire. So they're like apples and cars. Not even the same, not even the same solar system. So the way I think about billionaires, for the most part, being very stereotypical, there are, I'm sure, very philanthropic, good-hearted billionaires. But the ones that I'm seeing in the news, that's not my impression. So if you're a billionaire, this planet is very small. If you live in the United States and you never traveled outside the country, the world may seem very big to you. But for a billionaire, money is never a problem. They can go anywhere, they can do anything, they can fly anywhere on private jets. They have yachts, they can boat, they can yacht around. Um, it, it's just a very different, it's a very different world for them. And so instead of worrying about what kind of job you have or how much your salary is or how your relationships are or how your kids are or where you're going to live, um, their their perspectives and the things that they worry about or concern about or think about, they're very different. So they're competing on a level with other billionaires. They're not competing with a realtor or um, a venture capitalist. They're not dealing. They're not competing on that level. They're competing with other billionaires. And so when the world is really small for all the billionaires, and you're competing with each other, like how much more money can I get and have more money than the other billionaire in my neighborhood? It, it feels like we are a game. So when you have billionaires vying a presidency and vying for cabinet positions, this is a game. This is it's power. It's power for them. It's um something exciting. It's, if the world is so small and kind of boring, this is exciting, but it's a game. It's like they're playing Monopoly and we're the pieces. We're the car and the iron and the hat. We're the pieces. The people, we the people of the United States, we're the pieces. And this goes for other countries too, where billionaires are um trying to take the reins and throw government structures away because they think they know better. And maybe they have some ideas. I'm not saying that they don't have ideas, but to try to dismantle an entire government structure because the billionaires are playing, it's not funny, but it feels like, the movie Animal House, the big, fraternity parties and toga parties. It feels like the White House is going to be turned into Animal House, that they're like, let's go. And it's a fun game because no matter what happens, no matter what they do, no matter if they make things better or worse or um, tank the economy, they have billions. They're going to be fine. But what about those people, those Americans that are two paychecks away from disaster? That's a big deal. That's a big deal. So billionaires are not typically our friends. Um, Not on that level. So part of the power, disillusionment, powerless, feeling powerless. What can we do? What can we do? So looping back around to finding community, knowing who you are, standing strong in your power, your personal power, because that's really the only power that we actually have control over. We have control over our own selves, who we are, how we decide to connect to ourselves, how we decide to navigate in the world, um, how we decide to react. What are our conscious choices and intentions? What are our values? What do we stand for? And I'll do future videos diving into those a little bit more, but for the moment, just standing strong in your own power. That's the best power of all, your own empowerment. Give yourself permission to have that power. That feels like a good place to end. All right. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. Talk to you soon. Bye.